their heads in, or is it? It's like, is this new? Is the world? Was the world always this completely insane and getting more shouty and insane?
Oh no, it's nutty, Rabbi. Everything is nuts.
Everything's crazy.
But yeah,
how's the T-shirt go? How's the slogan go? Make Orwell fiction again.
Yeah. That's just only one of the weirdnesses. England going totalitarian. It's like so many things are crazy. Trump was shot in the head a few months ago. We totally forgotten. Right? It's crazy.
They tried so hard, didn't they, to memory hole that entire day.
People have forgotten about New Year's Day in New Orleans already, and that was like, what, 2.5 weeks ago?
Exactly. Yeah, we're living in great... But again, we used to have really great TV to sink into.
Well, no, we still have great TV. We have great classic TV.
That's the difference. It's all old.
I guess, but it's like, you know... I'm like Iran-Contra didn't seem so bad because Deep Space Nine was on, right?
Iran-Contra, no, that was 10 years before DS9.
Yeah, okay, that was no, then it was Bionic Man. You can forgive anything for the Bionic Man.
Yeah,
certainly the Bionic Woman.
And hello, everybody. Absolutely. I'm just trying to find one of the most terrifying videos I've ever seen.
This time last week, gentlemen, we went live, and it had only been a day or so since the horrific fires in California, hadn't it? And it's still, from what you've been saying, Gary, it's still going on.
They're still fighting them. I mean, a couple of the smaller ones obviously are put down, but the two big ones, I don't know what the percentage of containment is, but we're almost at week 2 and they're still fighting them.
Yeah. But it's like, it's insane. Jimmy Kimmel was saying that the argument that things are so bad is that, the Trump and the MAGA crazy people are saying that it's because there's not enough white people and the firefighters. That's why it's so bad. I'm like, no one said that.
I've not heard a single person say that.
They're saying that the money that you should have spent preparing for this fire, in every way you should have prepared for it, right? You spent it on stupid lesbian studies.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Right? Which, verifiably they did. It's just
they're conflating that problem with DEI policy with the problem with actual people.
Exactly. It's like, but there's so few people with that worldview now. Right, they're like they're like the Japanese soldier on an island in the 1960s. Things are
I had an experience like that today on X when I was posting. I mean, I got involved in a little conflab just about a particular actress in a particular part.
I involved myself in that and sent them a meme that will make them nice and mad. So it was coming up. I couldn't help myself. Sorry, Dan. I fanned your flames.
It's quite all right. But what I found was it was like the last 5 or 6 years had never happened. And I thought, just when I thought that all of you little insectoids had been stamped out or self-deleted or fled over to Blue Sky with all the other dubious characters who like looking at all manner of things that we won't speak of. But yeah, a couple of these characters just popped up and started coming out with the same kind of talking points and slurs from 4, 5, 6 years ago. The word incel. The word incel was what the fuck?
They're still doing that. Yeah. What a fun time. Oh,
yes, it was a real blast down memory lane, that one. Thank you if you're watching, whoever that was.
It's he was special. He was very, very special. Oh,
well, I don't do this very often, Chris, but I clicked on his profile and it said whatever his name was, this sort of pudgy faced sort of man child,
the one who hasn't brushed his hair since the 80s.
And it said progressive and stubborn. I thought, God, that they always tell them themselves, don't they? These lefties always.
Yeah.
Well, Dan, tonight I'm watching. I broke my rule actually. Tonight I'm watching Demolition Man. The movie that predicted the future, and I've altered my no upgrading to 4K rule. It now has to be one of my top 25 to 50 movies. I have like a really old Blu-ray of this, but Arrow Video put out this awesome set that I've been looking at. I'm like, screw it, I'm breaking my rule. I bought the set. So in exceptional cases, I will now upgrade, but only in exceptional.
All right, so what else was in the set? But I love Demolition Man. I wish the Judge Dredd movie was as good as Demolition Man, but I like the Judge Dredd movie too.
It's a brand new 4K transfer. Typical Arrow comes with a booklet,
Right.
a decent sized little booklet. Tons of extras. No, the Blu-ray is very old, so I broke my rule. So now for reference, my new rule: if it looks really nice, I'm going to get it. I'm also going to upgrade Dune. Although I missed the original one, which we'll be touching on later, but I upgraded Dune.
Wait,
I will be upgrading Dune.
Which one is it?
The David Lynch Dune.
From man, I just had a whole thing about David Lynch on my screen. So
I don't want to do spoilers, but I missed out, and I waffled on it for years. I'm like, should I upgrade to the set? I'm like, no, then I looked at it, and then after the events that we'll be talking about later, I'm like, okay, I'm going to get that. I've missed out on the special edition. I've missed out on the booklet, all that's available. It's still the 4K, the standard
is that like the 4-hour version?
I have to double check. It's, as far as I know, the 4K is the same as what's on there. I don't think it's the full 4-hour version.
So I've got a multi-disc DVD set of it, which sort of opens up like a fancy book. It's got like a beautiful picture sort of inset into it, with it's sort of jet black Gary, and the word Dune is just picked out in gold leaf. And there's an image in a square in the center with the sandworm on. That's got loads of stuff on, another extra footage, but I haven't watched it in a number of years. So if there is some sort of 4K coming out, maybe I'll consider getting it.
You know what? I really like the TV.
It came out a while ago.
2000s. You ever see it with William?
Yeah,
Byrne?
I did too. Yeah,
that was and I like the follow up with what's his name, James McAvoy as was it not Doom? He turns into Doom God Emperor. The son of
Paul.
I really like those. They were actually, I mean, very obviously told on a limited budget, but it was a really interesting artistic interpretation of Dune. I really liked it.
Well, the Sci-Fi Channel used to have an identity, didn't it? Do you remember?
Yeah, it became Siffy.
And they'd make different programs to different budgets as well. So there's miniseries and rolling series.
Right, with the last show was Defiance. After that, there was no Sci-Fi Channel. It was just like Warehouse 24 or whatever it was called.
That was the last big launch.
It became the Sharknado channel.
What?
Oh, Sharknado.
Yes, that's all they showed, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Forgot about that. I mean, the last thing I remember taking
various things heading to the planet to wipe us out. Those kind of movies.
It's now in Britain. It's now part of Sky TV, so it's literally just like Sky Crime, Sky Reality. So it's just one of a number of channels, and it's so bland. They just show endless reruns of things like Grimm, and I think you get the X-Files on there and stuff like that. But for the most part, it's pretty mid-tier stuff.
Shows that have been totally forgotten. There was a show called Brimstone about.
I remember with the Shaw Pfeiffer's husband, that little bloke.
Oh, I watched an episode.
Well, the bloke broke out of hell, and the cop has to track them down. Great little show. Only
I loved it.
Episodes. Love that.
I'd almost forgotten about Brimstone.
I can confirm that I just looked it up. So the standard edition runtime for the feature is 137 minutes. So it's the original. To be honest, I don't care if it's got the extra. It's got a ton of documentaries and stuff on it. Arrow is my new friend.
They are your new best friend.
Documentary on a Blu-ray is still Prometheus. I love that makeup, and I think I prefer it to the movie, and I like the movie.
Yeah, I like the movie a lot as well. Keith Isles was in that film. I'm sure he's told you.
He hasn't. Who was he? He wasn't one of the with the white Adonis god men at the beginning, was he?
No, but I know that he's in it. He's sort of stood in the background behind Michael Fassbender, working a computer console a lot of the time. He's like in a bright white suit or something like that.
I really like that movie.
Yeah, he's. I mean, I tell you the story myself, but it's obviously he'd get it right. I'd tell you some more version of it, but I think he did a few days on that. Yeah, he'll probably tell you. Hello, everybody.
When you gents get a new Blu-ray or a 4K pack with extras, do you try to make it a point to at least dip into every single one of the extras?
Yes.
Usually it depends on the release, but if it's especially if it's one of the Arrow like deluxe editions, yes. If it's older Scream Factory when they actually cared, yes, when they do their hour-long documentary. Studio stuff, generally no. But boutique label stuff, usually yes. Unless it's Modern Scream Factory, where their idea of a deluxe edition includes a 10-minute interview with the second assistant to the makeup artist that's going to talk about their career, rather than like these amazing like hour-long things they used to do. Although I did watch Incubus this week.
Okay.
Well, it's it's William Shatner, 1966, another amazing edition from Arrow.
This is the one that they've recently discovered the negatives to, isn't it?
And it's in it's all in the language of Esperanto, which is an invented language. It's one of only 4 films ever made in this language. 2 of them are recent by some crazy person. So basically, it's a film of a 1 year prior to, because it was shot in 1965, 1 year prior to Star Trek, William Shatner speaking in tongues, but it's beautifully shot. I would recommend this. You can actually see a terrible version on the YouTubes, because I think copyright on this is long since out. But so that's what I experienced this week. William Shatner, 1965, speaking in tongues, and it's got a really interesting feature about the history of Esperanto. So there we go.
That actually sounds worth the price of admission, Chris. I think a curiosity.
Is there nothing that man can't do?
I love Shatner. Well, no, literally, they none of them spoke the language. They gave them the script. They said, "Oh, this is going to be." They thought it was going to be in English, and then no, they're like, "No, it's going to be in Esperanto." So nobody had any idea what they were saying. So they learned their lines. Apparently, Esperanto snobs, like the 100 or so people that actually spoke the language, laughed all the way through the movie at their accents. But no one has any idea what they're saying. But it's obviously got subtitles. If you don't want to get the Arrow edition, which is awesome, by the way, like I said, Arrow are my new best friends. They've replaced that other thing that I've disowned. It is worth checking out. Like, this thing is bonkers. So check out the YouTube. The quality's terrible, but you'll get an idea.
Bonkers. Indeed. We've got a lot to talk about on this edition of the show, everybody. We've got some comments already. No doubt we'll dip into a bit of physical media as things are going along. We did have a list of things to talk about, and then a really big story broke. A sad story, but a story full of light and drama nonetheless. So we'll talk about that and him as we go along, as well as a few other things as well thrown into the mix. Maybe another couple of people will materialise. I don't know where they all are. They're all stuck in transmission somewhere along the way. But please let us know what you think of what we've spoken about already and everything that's to come there on Rumble and on YouTube. Can anybody hear me? Can you hear me okay? Yeah.
It's Digital Daredevil. That's the way you say the name. Getting a motorcycle over obstacles is the way you play the game. If you want to be a player, you have to move the cycle just right. And if you don't play real careful, you'll see a flashing light. You can play at lower high speeds and even control the jump. And if you're really a good player, the cycle gets through without a bump. Batteries not included. Digital Daredevil, the digital motorcycle stunt game, is made by Tomy.
The digital Daredevil, everybody, the digital Daredevil. I've always wanted one of those. You could say we're all digital Daredevils here, couldn't you, on the Spacebook Live? Welcome back. This is not just where we talk all there, out there. All there? Not just where we talk all of out there entertainment, we live stream it to you on YouTube and Rumble as well, 100% in real time. It's Saturday, January the 18th, 2025, and I'm Dan Hadley, Birmingham's King of the Geeks. And we're already hanging loose here aboard the good ship, Spacebook Live, with my panel. So far, we have Gary Akers there, only a few days away from a great moment in American history there, Gary.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Time is ticking, baby.
You're talking about, obviously, the release of the Season 7 Doctor Who collection set. That's what you're talking about.
Oh, yeah. Is that that? That's March, isn't it?
March 3rd.
Oh, okay.
I think Gary's exaggerating for comic effect there.
I am exaggerating for comic effect. Yeah. A firestorm of sanity actually will hopefully sweep over.
It's weird. It's like it's like it's coming anyway. It's been happening all the time anyway. So yeah, it's like Facebook suddenly turned around. Like it's so much going on.
Yeah, it's happening. It's happening. America is on its way back. It's just heaven knows how long it'll take us here in Britain before it sweeps all over the world. There. Speaking of which, you've had some great news in Canada the last couple of weeks too. Chris, welcome back.
Hi. How's everybody doing?
Well, Frank looks a bit cross considering it's been great news.
No. This isn't Frank. So this is we're continuing in the story of Frank's New Year's Day incident.
Oh, things went pear-shaped, didn't they?
Yeah. So this is Judge Krabby. So Frank has just been found guilty of doing the unspeakable things that he did on New Year's Eve. So he's currently being held in a cell, and we're awaiting sentencing. So Judge Krabby is pondering this, and he's also here to judge you again, Dan, to make sure that you stand in line, because he's working for Sir Keir again. So Judge Krabby is here this week. So by next week, we will know Frank's fate. So hashtag pray for Frank.
And mine, if he's going to be inspecting our doings. Yeah, Rabbi. I don't think. Do you think fortune will smile upon us? It's doubtful, isn't it?
What, in England?
Yeah.
I keep thinking there's got to be something that happens that makes the government. But they're so awful, right? There's got to be, but like I don't know. I saw Sadiq Khan this week flat out not answer about grooming gangs. Did you see that clip?
No, I didn't, but I can't say I'm surprised by any.
Real things. What is that? Could you define it? And she's like, well, the woman defines it. Says, no, I don't know what that is. We have it like.
Not a disingenuous scumbag at all. No.
I don't know. It's England, and worst thing is England's going to be seen like so much more of a backward country 6 months from now. I mean, look how out of date Doctor Who is, right? And they filmed that 2 years in advance, all right? They wrote it 2 years. It's so out of date, right? The season 1 or whatever, the shooty season 1 and the specials out of date, right? And by the way, I had a brilliant revelation on my stream earlier, right?
Go on.
You know the bit in the 50th of the Day of the Doctor, right? Where all the doctors come together. No, sir, all 13, right? So somebody says, well, how does that work out? How do you get it? So then I realized the 60th anniversary should have had to been going to recruit each one of those doctors to come at that moment and recreate.
Oh no, that would have been too much.
That would have been awesome, and everybody would have been happy, and then you can have a story around that. But
everybody would be happy in Doctor Who. You must be joking.
Wow, in terms of everybody likes the 5 doctors.
It's bound to have made it. It's bound to have made it all worse. No. I think we're better off with a lot of this stuff. The more contentious stuff, we're better off sort of putting it as far in the past as possible and moving past as a fandom, as collective fandoms, and hoping that eventually we all stop talking about it or forget about it.
But the point is, it's very contemporarily written for 2019. It's horribly out of date now, right?
Mate. If you see any bit. No, I completely agree with you. But the thing is, a lot of BBC programming is exactly the same. They're crime dramas. They've got a show called Shetland, which, as you would imagine, is set on the Shetland Islands, which is a population of about 42 people. Yeah. And but this crime drama has been running for several years. They're standard murder of the week stuff, and they've recently, in the last couple of series, they've sort of swapped the lead out. It used to be Douglas Henshaw, this fabulous Scots character actor. They swapped him out, and they've got Ashley Jensen in it now. You know, I like Ashley Jensen. She's great, but they've put her in it, and they've got another. It's all women basically wandering around the Shetland Islands, telling every bloke they can possibly find that he's a pervert or a criminal or a degenerate or ticking every box. Every man in the Shetland Islands is a wanker. All of these women are fantastic. You just can't. It is unwatchable, and it's just as backward as Doctor Who.
Universe, right? I'm still convinced that the Queen Latifah Equalizer TV show is a parody, right? That every time I look at it, it's like I'm on 30 Rock. I'm like, how can that be real? That's Queen Latifah is the Equalizer. What?
And not only that, Rabbi, I just read this morning they're working on a spin-off for that show. Seriously.
What's that going to be called?
Seriously.
Oh, my God. Oh.
But We'll have to watch one of these things one time.
But I actually was a big fan of Shetland when Doug Henshaw was on. I haven't watched the last two since the changeover, but I was a big fan of the original version.
Yeah, it was perfectly fine as these things go, isn't it?
England and the BBC are going to be so out of date and so embarrassing. I mean, just as they have been over the grooming gang things, where they basically say, "Oh yeah, we just."
Well, Rabbi, they'll never realize it. Like they are so up their own asses. They are so stuck in their bubble. Look at the former company, now not so good company that used to create Doctor Who audios, whose name I will not mention. It's like they are trying to chase away their audience now.
They really are. They really, really are. Right? Like I was listening to that Dark Gallifrey thing, and it wasn't bad, but I kind of got bored and didn't get the last part. And apparently, you had Captain John from Torchwood having sex with a male TARDIS. I'm like, what?
I've had some people told me that apparently the Eighth Doctor is a boyfriend now or something. I've had.
That's the Eighth Doctor in the Eighth Doctor New Monster. Yeah, no, they're like, I'm like, I don't know how far out you're writing this, but it's so out of date. Nobody's interested. That little Twitter. That Sky bubble, it isn't going to sustain you.
Yeah, don't get me started on their relaunch, remaking of the Bring Back the Heroes. That's what I say, Bring Back the Heroes. And if Chuck Norris, Samo, and what's his name, Kevin Sorbo, bring them all back. Bring them all back. Of course, these gentlemen now are somewhat senior, I think, expecting them to chase down the bad guys and leap up and down alleyways. It could be a bit of a tall order for these lads, but they have passed on the torch to a new generation, and I'm happy to say that both of these shows are on their way back. The Night Agent and Reacher are both dropping new series in the next few weeks. So, the Night Agent on January the 23rd, and it's just a little way into February there for the third season of Reacher, probably one of my favourite shows the last few years. These are good, honest heroes, Rabbi. Surely this has got to be a good thing.
I haven't seen Reacher. It just didn't appeal to me at all.
You'd love it, mate. You'd love it.
This is the trouble with having decentralized TV for everything. There's no shared cultural,
right? Yep.
So it might be great. And the Night Agent, I remember the first one looked good. I didn't say, is it the same people as the first one? Can I get that from Netflix too?
As far as I'm aware, it's the same people. I haven't actually seen the Night Agent, but Ian David Diaz, he's a big fan of that. He's supposed to be here. I don't know where Ian is, but he's a big fan of this, and I just love Reacher. Gary, do you watch these shows?
Yeah, I haven't seen the Night Agent yet. I thought the first season of Reacher was fantastic. I ended up binging it all in like 2 nights. The second season, I thought they made some. I know they're adapting books, but they kind of gave him like a team of his old team of Reachers. And
it was like Mission Impossible crossed with sort of Hooper, or one of those Burt Reynolds.
And they were starting to make him more of a Superman, which they shouldn't do. So I'm hoping that the third season is more like the first season, which was great. I think
new location, new cast again for the third season. Apparently, all the books take place in different places.
Reacher. Okay, this was a really stupid reason, but again, we don't centralize the culture. He says that the actor says something really woke and stupid just as the second something was coming out, and I was like, "Oh, screw you! I'm not even going to have a look." That's what it was. It was 100%.
I didn't see. No, I didn't see that.
On your recommendation, I'll sort of give it a go. The next shows I want to check out are on Apple Plus because Severance just started, so I'm in for that. Love Severance, really weird. But the next one I want to check out is For All Mankind and C. Right, C is written by this guy I really like, Stephen Knight, right? I had no idea. I wasn't really interested in it, and For All Mankind by the Deep Space Nine guy, was it?
Ronald D. Moore.
Yeah, yep. So I really want to give those a go next.
Yeah, you've told me about how good what it is several times. What's that show? Silo.
Severance just started. Thing is, Apple Plus is kind of like what HBO Max used to be. When Apple Plus does a show, it is high quality. Everything they do is high quality. Like there's a show they had on earlier this year called Constellation that only got one season, and I'm really glad about it. But man, watch that on 4K. Yeah, Bowles, you got to see that on 4K. It's crazy, right?
What's that again?
Beautiful. Called Constellation on Apple Plus.
It did look good.
I may try an Apple Plus trial.
For All Mankind is another one of the shows that apparently they're working on a spin-off for.
It sounded woke to me, but I'm like, I'll give it a go.
It sounded woke to me as well. I only watched it because Andy, the Atomic Blonde, recommended it. So she wouldn't recommend any old shit. So I went for it. I wasn't disappointed either. Yeah. I'm a little bit more tentative when it comes to this next item. I'm about to venture a little earlier than planned back to the MCU, and it's mainly because I'm a bit of an old Daredevil fan when it comes to the 1980s stuff. I started reading Marvel Comics properly, say 84, 85, something like that, just in time for the seminal run, the Born Again run on the Daredevil title. So it was a 4-issue run, wasn't it? Written by Frank Miller and drawn by David Mazzucchelli, I think the name is. I think that's how you pronounce it, Rabbi. Yep. So this is something that gets sort of, well, I think the original was 4, wasn't it? And then they did a kind of a semi-sequel, which now it all gets, whenever they put it out as a trade paperback, it gets collapsed.
I remember buying it as it came out. Hey, one second, I'll look it up for you. I got the trade right now.
The actual Born Again story is meant to be just the 4. I know what the Rabbi means because it is by the same people. It does follow on, and whenever they collect it together, they do always put it all in together. But Born Again itself is just supposed to be the 4 parts. Heaven knows how much of that they're going to have adapted into this new TV show coming on Disney Plus. Launches on March the 4th here, and we have a new poster, and we had a new trailer drop this very week. I was holding off my return to the MCU until the Vision show, which I don't think that's due until next year, to tell you the truth, Gary. But being a bit of a Daredevil fan anyway, being an 80s kid, I had to take a look at this, and I think they've got me on board. Have you seen the trailer for Born Again?
I have seen it. My first reaction was more to question, are they actually adapting the events of the original story? Because
it's hard to say, isn't it?
I mean, obviously the title's the same, but and it's 18 episodes, so clearly even if they are, there's going to be a lot of stuff in this that's not in the original story.
There tends to be a lot of padding when it comes to, I mean, this is one of the problems I had with the original Netflix incarnation of the Marvel shows, the Daredevil, Iron Fist, Luke Cage, Jessica Jones, all those shows. I always found that a lot of those were padded out, and then they weren't exactly slavish to any source material, and there was no claim to be, was that? They were kind of distillations of each character. Here they have something finite that they should be adapting, but maybe it's a loose adaptation, as you say. It's hard to say.
There's no way they're going to do the Karen Page arc.
No, exactly.
No way.
It doesn't look like they're doing it. I think they're using the name Born Again to say it's rebooting into the DC universe.
But that's an awesome tagline on that. Whoever came up with the tagline on that poster, that's great. Where he says the devil's work is never done. That's a great line.
Yeah.
It's a great post. Obviously, getting Charlie Cox back to play Matt Murdock Daredevil, I think that was probably essential if this was going to fly at the moment. Getting Vincent D'Onofrio back as the Kingpin was almost as important, if not more important. I don't know, because he's the guy. We see his face. We only see half of Charlie Cox's face, don't we, Chris? But it's that power struggle, I suppose, between those two characters. They are, in a sense, they're kind of like the Joker is to Batman, but it's all very street level. Chris, did you watch the original show on Netflix, and does this appeal to you in any way?
I think I watched a season of the original one, but no, I didn't even bother watching the trailer. For me, it's maybe if this was 5 years ago, I might have checked it out, but I am so just checked out. I've been turned off to everything Marvel, even though, I've been hearing all over that the trailer is actually good. I think pretty much everybody has been saying that. But for myself, it's, would also involve giving that company and their streaming service money again, which I absolutely refuse to do. So I don't necessarily have anything bad to say about this. Just my interest in it is just not there. I'll be skipping it. But I am glad that people are excited for this, and for those that are excited, it's awesome, because there's not a whole lot to be excited for these days. But I think this is a sign that things are turning partially. Maybe.
Well, they're trying to turn it around, but it's going to take years, and already they destroyed the movie industry. Like, people just are not going back, right? People have developed other habits. They're never getting the. I mean, I don't know, but then you see something like Wallace and Gromit do like 20 million or 15 million. You go,
puts things into perspective, doesn't it? I mean, could they be with approaching something like this, Rabbi, and keeping it distinctive? I don't know if they're going sort of a hard R rating on this, but it does look pretty uncompromising, and it looks very. How can I put this? It looks like it lines up to the original show really, really well, rather than sitting alongside, for example, the likes of She-Hulk or that Hawkeye show. This does look, if not unique, it looks like it's its own entity. Is that the wisest place to go?
It looks like season 3 or season 4 of Daredevil.
Yeah.
It looks like Daredevil to me.
You mean She-Hulk's not in this?
I think they backtracked from that so insanely hard.
Because in all honesty, Gary, I have no issue with a comedy superhero attorney show like She-Hulk existing for whoever they imagine that show is for. No problem at all. Right. I don't have to watch it. It's fine.
It was for the people that made it. That was it.
But with something like this, if everything was going to go down that road, which it absolutely was, which is why I bailed on everything. But if they're only going to take certain things down that road or aim some stuff at kids or whatever, but the alternative is that there will still be on the menu, potentially going forward from this point, stuff geared more at adults or comics fans, or for people who want things as they were. Then I think that's something that I can live with a lot more, because you get that breadth and scope in comics, don't you? Comics with different tones and flavours and aimed at slightly different kinds of kids. So I think to adopt that principle to TV shows is fine. It's going to be too late for some. It could be too late for me. I don't know. I was surprised how much I enjoyed this trailer. I had no intention of coming back for this, but I'm going to give it a go when March the 4th, whenever it is.
Yeah, I'll watch it. I'm not excited about it.
No, I can't say I am excited as such.
I honestly think Superman will do so much for the MCU in get people excited for superhero movies again.
Is this going to be?
I really hope they turn it around, right? And I think they're very much trying to. But then you see Kathleen Kennedy still in space, right? And they keep trying to make a Ray movie for some what are you thinking?
This is the 13th. This is the 13th. This is the 13th Marvel
entire series at once, or is it weekly?
I haven't been able to work that out. I think it's coming weekly, but this is the 13th Marvel TV show set in the MCU. I think I watched the first 3, maybe 4. I know I only lasted 2 episodes of She-Hulk, 3 episodes of Hawkeye. I bailed. I think I got 4 into that Winter Soldier Falcon thing. I haven't watched any of this stuff for years and years.
I got all the way through that and regretted it. And I saw 1 episode of Bucky. Not Bucky. Hawkeye.
Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Yeah. Okay, my biggest disappointment though was Jessica Jones, which is one of the best comics ever written. Had David Tennant in it, who's really well cast as the purple guy, right? And they just ballsed it up. It was a boring series. It was just badly written.
I kept meaning to watch that for years.
Oh, don't bother. Read the comic. Honestly, don't bother.
Well, I think
it's so disappointing. Anyway.
As I understand it, that they plan. As I understand it, they plan on there being 2 seasons of Daredevil Born Again. Each season will be 9 episodes long, as you say, forming an 18-episode saga, Gary. So heaven knows. They could drop them all at once, but then again, the recent Disney model has been like a Star Wars show, Skeleton Crew, that was putting out one episode most weeks, wasn't it? Sometimes it was two.
I didn't know that they were splitting it up. I thought it was all like one.
Neither did I until yesterday.
Well, maybe it's they'll have like a conclusion, but they'll be leaving it open for a sequel season.
So, Dan, is this White Tiger?
It looks that way. It looks that way to me. Looks that way to me, Rabbi. Because that's also what they've done with Andor as well, isn't it? When they got Tony Gilroy to commit to doing that, the idea was it's going to be 2 seasons, a finite thing. So maybe it's the same thing in principle here. Because Andor is, generally speaking, the best received of all those Star Wars shows, I think.
That's true. I mean, you know what? It's so not Star Warsy though, right? It's much more set in the was that a sci-fi movie George Lucas did before in THX?
THX, yeah.
Right, it's so much more set in that universe than it is in the Star Wars. I'm like, in a bit, man. And the biggest problem is its opening 6 or 7 episodes are boring as hell and can be edited down into 1 episode. It picks up in the last few episodes. It gets interesting. When it ends up in like an Imperial jail, that from then onwards, it's good. But it takes a long time to get there. Again, look, this looks like an okay show. It's not Born Again in any way, shape, or form. It's just using the name. It's Born Again in the same way that Moonraker was Moonraker. You know?
Yeah.
They bore no identity, resemblance to each other.
Well, maybe we'll be singing a different tune, a more upbeat tune by April, because we're going to know pretty early on whether they've got this right or not, aren't we, Rabbi?
Yeah, no, it looks like a good show. It's just I don't expect Born Again, which is fabulous.
Yeah, best get the graphic novel in. It's still in print, isn't it? They re-release it in hardback and black and white editions every now and again. It's such a distinctive cover as well.
Yep.
Dave Mazzucchelli learning how to draw it's so good, right? I think it was 8 issues in this. Only 1 issue is called Born Again, though. Weirdly enough, right? It was like part 4 or 5.
That's Daredevil Born Again coming to Disney Plus on March the 4th, 2025. Everyone, maybe we'll watch it. We'll certainly watch the first one on this show and let you know what we think. What do you think? Have you read that original run there back in the 80s? Have you got the collected edition like the Rabbi has? And have you seen the trailer? Has this sort of changed your mind maybe that there could be more to see in Marvel on TV? After all, let us know what you think. Gary, I understand that after last week's show, when we talked about a particular slice of British gritty crime TV, that you've decided to give it a try, haven't you?
I did. Last night I watched the pilot for one of your all-time favorite shows, Dempsey and Makepeace. And it was, what is her hair there? Good grief.
That's like just been shagged look, isn't it?
It was, holy cow. I mean, it was quintessential 80s. I mean, she's beyond gorgeous. And they have great chemistry on the show. I love the captain, the Spikings, the captain.
Spikings,
and there's a fair decent amount of like action, with the rousing music, and I'm going to keep going on this. I really enjoyed the pilot.
Oh, you are? Because it's the pilot. It's a 90-minute thing, isn't it? And it goes on just that little bit too long. But you do get explosions, you get helicopters, you get trucks, you get bikes, you get cars, you get glamorous parties, and you get proper sort of shithole pubs, and you get everything that it sort of lines up with all the different facets to British culture of the time. It's all in there.
Gary, can I ask you?
Yes.
What's your take on the British look at Americans? Which is a lot of this in there, isn't there? It's very. What's your take on that?
Well, especially in the first one, because there's a scene, I guess, where she goes, she's posh, and you realize throughout the show that she's like probably royal born and connected to everybody and stuff. And she goes into a high-end store and knows somebody and tells him, he's American, and the guy goes, yes. It's like, it's like the plague. It's like, don't get too near.
During the war, the British called the Americans overpaid, oversexed, and over here.
I'm really glad you enjoyed it, Gary.
To the show's credit, I mean, they do have. He's the one that really makes all the detective connections in terms of advancing the case and everything, in terms of his hunches and everything. And of course, she's like, "You're crazy. I'm not going to do that." And then, of course, she goes along with him and does it all. But I mean, you can already see how the dynamic's going to be. It's like he's the renegade. She'll be the one who, resists at first and then goes along and has to admit that he was right and everything. And so, it's fun. It's fun.
Yeah. I'm really glad you enjoyed it, because obviously it is. I wouldn't say it's mindless escapism, but it's not far off. I think it means to entertain, but there is, as the series sort of goes on, and as I say, there's 30 of them, and it does run out of steam a little bit, just as the rabbi sort of said last week, it does run out of steam towards the end. The charm of the leads.
I hope that the will they, won't they vibe doesn't take over the show, because some shows are better when
it doesn't.
Not
no,
so
I think they deal with that by the end of the first season or something.
Yeah.
Well, it goes because there's breaks in between the seasons as well, and in particular the second and the third, where a certain amount of time passes. So you could be surprised by some of the stuff that goes on in the corners on the show. So it's not necessarily what you think. I won't pretend that it's anything necessarily clever.
That's what killed Moonlighting. The minute they got together, the show was over.
Yeah. That's what killed the X-Files.
Yeah. Absolutely right. Whilst we're still languishing in the past, in TV past, let's go for broke here and take ourselves back to a time where the TV was full of cautionary tales of not so much about how to ruin the format of your TV show, but how not to maim yourself, or worse, by fiddling with explosives or any kind of substances, or doing anything that you shouldn't really, talking to strangers, all that malarkey. And over the last couple of months here on the Spacebook Live, we've been flirting with danger, haven't we, Chris? As you've been parading an astonishing collection of public information films, or PSAs, across the screen for us, haven't you? So you've got one for us again this week.
Oh, yeah. So this is once again from Concerned Children's Advertisers, the same people that brought us those blue monsters from hell about a month ago. So this one is an anti-drug announcement from the early 90s, which, if you live in Canada, this has been etched into your brain. And it had an unintended consequence, because this became the theme song for everybody that was engaging in various substances, mainly the ganja, the marijuana of things, which is legal. So I think we could say that. Who knows? Right. So everybody would sing this while they were smoking their hot boxed stuff and having fun. It's also one of the cringiest things you will ever see. So without further ado,
sing it. I'm intrigued.
Listen up, misters, and you too, sisters. Let's talk about something that's a real brain twister. Drugs. Which are good, which are bad. Drugs. Ask your mom or ask your dad. Drink a little water. Take the doctor's pill. Drugs can make you better when you're feeling ill. Drugs. Which are good, which are bad. Drugs. Ask your mom or ask your dad. There's lots of other drugs that sure have a flaw. Watch it now, man. It's trouble with the law. Drugs. Which are good, which are bad. Drugs. Ask your mom or ask your dad. Drugs. Which are good, which are bad. Drugs. Ask your mom or ask your dad.
Wow.
So the drugs. Yes, we used to sing that all the time when we were teenagers, doing things that weren't legal at the time but are legal now because this is Canada. I also decided after the horror of last week, I would lighten things up this week, because we're going back into the horror of Quebec road safety ads next week. So if you were in Canada, Well, yes, Lee Smith. That's the joke here. It does sound like a pro-drugs advert, and that's how we saw it.
Yeah, I was going to say. I mean, this makes drugs look fun. I wish I had some right here.
They played this on a loop for like 3 years. Like every children's show for probably, I think this was at 91, so 91 through probably about 94. Yeah, every commercial break had that. And it made you want to see what these drugs things were all about.
Exactly.
So it completely missed the point. But this is a Canadian classic. So anybody in the chat from Canada, let me know if you remember this, because it gets stuck in your head. So all you want to do is do drugs.
We never had anything quite like that in Britain. We had sort of songs. There was a song that came out attached to a show called Grange Hill, which is about a bunch of school kids, which was called Just Say No. But it was a very sort of somber pop song, and the message was very firm and very clear that, don't go anywhere near this stuff, kids. This will fuck you up. But that is like, yeah, it makes it sound like a good time could be had by all.
You're doing conga lines,
which is exactly what you do when you partake in this stuff. It's like, it's fun. It's trouble with the law. Not anymore. It isn't, because it's all legal in Canada. Well, Vancouver especially today. But yeah, so there you go, folks. Fun for this week. Drugs. Always good. Drugs. Don't tell your mom. Don't tell your dad. That was our version, because we were young and stupid.
Just say no. Remember the whole
all ends up. Yeah, well, that was absolutely awesome. I was just saying about that. The Grange Hill kids who went to meet Nancy Reagan, didn't they? If you remember, Rabbi, it's all over the news.
Well, actually, from what I remember at one of our very drunken shows, because I used to play in a band back in the day before I got old and grumpy and miserable. I believed we covered this once while we were all very inebriated, and we got everybody singing. I don't think I have that on tape either, which sucks. But yeah, it was this, and did we do the Degrassi theme song, the death metal version, to get people into that too? I miss the 90s.
We all missed the 90s here. I think it was somebody accused me earlier on of being stuck in the year 2017 over on X, but no, I insist that it's the 1970s really, but I'll take the 90s. They were good too. Let us know what you think, of course. Let us know if you can get that song shifted out of your head by the time that we come back for the next edition of the show. We will take full responsibility for that. Earworm. I think, is it an earworm or brainworm, or is it both? I don't know.
I just want to know how many kids are sitting there. They're singing along while they're watching it on TV, and then they go up to their, mom or dad and go, "Mom, I want some drugs."
Ask your mom.
That had to have happened all over the country.
Let's see how the live chat have taken all of that, and if it's stuck in their heads already.
I'm going to tell you how it's going to be. Scotch's lifetime guarantee. Take what you want both night and day. Then re-record, not fade away. Re-record, not fade away.
If it's Scotch, it's guaranteed for life.
I have a question about that. So if it's guaranteed for life, I have a bunch of VHS tapes in the basement that date back to the 80s and 90s. So if I put one of these in, and it happens to be Scotch, because I did have lots of Scotch tapes, they carried them at Kmart. Yep. So if I find, say, something that I recorded in, I don't know, 1991, and it doesn't work, so Scotch, and I guarantee there's some that don't work because most of them degauss and die after about 20 years. So Scotch, what kind of compensation am I going to get? Because I think that may be false advertising, because it didn't last a lifetime. I'm very.
I remember asking the same question when I was a kid in the 80s, because I was given them as birthday presents, Rabbi, and I saw the lifetime guarantee, and I remember asking my mother, "Will this really last my whole life?" And she just stared at me.
No, it is the average lifetime of a reel or videotape. That's the lifetime. It will last a lifetime on videotape.
About 20 years max, and then after that, unless you're really lucky, then they'll they start to go after about 10. Although I will get, Scotch was one of the better ones. Scotch was good.
That was a good brand.
The BASF Super tapes, not the standard ones, but they actually had this like industrial archival tape that you'd want.
I remember those.
Kodak, as I've said before, everything looked like yellow. Memorex, no. Maxell, no, they were garbage.
Maxell was shit, yeah.
There was the Kmart brand ones, no, they didn't last.
GDK wasn't.
I would get the cheapest one from the gas station and record it on LP. Okay, that's how bad it was.
It did. I used to do it. Depended on which show I was recording at the time. So how I would set it to SP or LP, but that's another story. Hail everyone, says Lord Thoth in the live chat. We've been joined by Lord Thoth. We've got Michael Q as well there, who seems very confused about our start time. Michael, it's in big letters on your screen, whatever device you view it on, mate. There's only so much that we can do here. Hello, Lee Smith. Welcome back to the show. We've got, who else is here? We've got Lucy Meows back as well there with the cat icon. Hi, everyone. And Lee asks, do the panel not know they are live? Of course we know. This is our first barbecue, Lee. Hi, everyone, says Stephen Braddock. Hi, Stephen.
Like his icon.
Happy Saturday. Yes, good, isn't it? That I think that's one of Stephen's own artworks. He's an artist.
Nice.
And Archangel Thunderbird was decent on the early Sci-Fi Channel. Rabbi, what's Archangel Thunderbird? It sounds like a bluey, but
it sounds like in the Jerry Anderson universe. I've never heard of it.
Maybe. Gaiman is everywhere. Lee goes on to say, how much Gaiman do you have in your house? Too much. Too much.
Yeah.
That's his problem. He was everywhere.
Try stopping him. Don't leave your letterbox open, for heaven's sake. Hail chat, says PT Rich. And who else is here? John Jordan's in as well, so he is fit and wellish. He's there in the live chat. Again, John, I hope to have you back sooner rather than later. Good to hear that your presence, if not correct. Bonkers, says Michael Q. Oh, well, I've never had any complaints so far. What else is here? Michael Stevens finally got over the cold and flu, but he's very cold tonight. Yeah, there is a warning of bad weather conditions too, as well here in Britain. So obviously, wrap up nice and warm, like everyone. Colin asks, being in Canada, was Frank convicted of telling the truth? Chris?
Well, no, that's his cousin, Professor Dinkles, who's still on the run from the law.
It's a complicated saga.
Frank just got himself into a very sticky situation. Like I said, Frank got very drunk on New Year's Eve because he's got a drinking and drug
happens
problem.
To us all.
The drugs thing is for him. But no, he did some very, very bad stuff. Things that I can't say on the stream because Dan will get in trouble. So no, it's we're all very ashamed of Frank. So Frank needs to seek help.
He's done a game, and he needs to be sorted out. I love Reacher, says Lord Thoth. That's another vote there, Rabbi, to sort of persuade you to maybe get on.
Same thing. He loves a good reach round.
But Matthew Pounder says it's a pity the actor is a doofus. Most actors are. Yeah. You know, that's a simple fact of reality. I think we've just got to accept that it does tend to attract cocks. Star Trek Voyager. Says Michael Q at 30.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it's the anniversary of Star Trek Voyager this week. Is that what he's saying?
I am so depressed. How is that? How is that 30 years ago? How? I don't get. I'm sad.
Yeah, me too. It does seem, because I still view that as newer Star Trek. I mean, that's quite a new show, and because I've watched it less than I've watched all the other stuff, because I was never the shine sort of went off it for me, you know.
Yeah,
it's the weakest of Real Trek, which ended in 2005. It's the only show that I'd never, despite trying for the whole 7 years it was on, I could never get into. It had a few good episodes per season, but it was mostly filler. And god damn it, how many times do you have to use the Borg?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I consider Enterprise generally to be superior to Voyager, even though it only ran for How many seasons of Enterprise were the 4?
Well, no, Dan, the first 2 seasons were just as bad as Voyager. The show had no idea what it was doing. Enterprise, it's seasons 3 and especially 4, which put it in a whole new level.
Yeah.
But Star Trek at that point, it was basically
excuse me,
going through the motions and redoing things that the TNG and in some cases DS9 had done better years before. I tried. I watched Voyager for 7 years. Like every season, they'd have maybe 2 or 3 brilliant episodes, but they were the exception. What I remember about Voyager for the most part is being bored to tears. And I didn't realize how bad it was until I picked up the, 20 years ago now, the DVDs and tried watching it all the way through. And I'm like, my God, this is dull. Whereas like DS9, I'd be through like a full set in a week. Voyager, I think 20 years later, there's some of those sets I haven't finished. It's like, yeah, I've had these discussions before about my sacrilege.
I mean, for me, Voyager's biggest flaw was that the premise really demanded that it be a serialized show, and they tried to make it an episodic TNG type show. That was its biggest flaw.
You mentioned it.
Well, Dan, here's the thing: they completely there was an opportunity here, and the opportunity as to what the show should have been was played out in a 2-episode part in an alternate 2-episode alternate timeline thing called Year of Hell.
Yeah,
that should have been the show.
Yeah.
Well, somebody said to me years ago, and this was like certainly before any kind of social media groups and things like that, before I started to get into that kind of thing. This guy, we watched Voyager, myself and a group of mates, and we talk about it at the pub. And we were all really frustrated by it because of that kind of reset, how it never really committed to the broad arc. And then Battlestar Galactica was what would you call it, a reboot of that appeared, and that seemed like a similar sort of story but done properly. That everything that Galactica was doing in the noughties was largely what we'd wanted Voyager to be. So it was 10 years on? Yeah, blimey, Galactica's nearly 20 years old. Oh no, move on. Just say no.
Voyager had a great cast. I mean, all the classic Trek shows were
they were all well cast. For the most part,
I'd say Voyager probably had the weakest of those casts, though. Another problem with Voyager is we didn't really, at least from my perspective, we didn't really see the character development, and things like the Tom Paris, B'Elanna Torres relationship just seemed so forced and contrived. The Doctor was awesome. I couldn't stand Neelix from the beginning of the end, or from the beginning to the end. But whereas every show, like you look at Deep Space Nine, you see the development of Sisko, or the development of Patrick Stewart on The Next Generation, where it largely seemed to be absent. They try and show development with Harry Kim, maybe, but
I'd forgotten about the Torres and Tom Paris thing, and there was also a thing between Chakotay and Seven of Nine. Everything that they tried in that show,
they tried to wedge that into the last few episodes.
And Chakotay and Captain Janeway as well. That was another one. So none of this stuff worked. I mean, and yet they were. It's not that any of them were badly cast.
I think a big problem is that the guy who played Chakotay hated everyone.
The guy's a jerk. Well, apparently Janeway.
Yeah, she's a jerk.
Or Kate Mulgrew was a nightmare, and Jerry Ryan was apparently actually terrified of her because she was just so cruel.
Well, listen, Jerry Ryan shows up in silver spandex with huge boobs and an incredible figure. I understand,
but we all
may have been threatened. Yeah, you could be right.
Yeah.
We have an answer. We have an answer to a question here in the live chat, and we've got hashtag justice for Dinkles. So that is gaining momentum here, Chris. Being no doubt. But Lee Smith stepped in and said Archangel Thunderbird was a British anime film by Tony Luke and quite unique. I may have seen that. Now I'll have to look it up. It's probably on YouTube, isn't it? Archangel Thunderbird goes on the list.
Although the one thing I have to say about Voyager is thank God they recast the captain, because have you seen the scenes with Genevieve?
Yeah, I have,
good Lord. Look, if you haven't seen this, look them up on YouTube. However, she's done horror movies that were fine, like Obsession and a few others, which she was fine in, but my God, just look them up on YouTube for yourselves, Chad. It's good Lord.
But to her credit, she knew within a day that it wasn't going to work and then took off.
After
fair enough, isn't it?
Like,
Frankly,
she's like,
Jerry Ryan would have been much better casting as the captain.
She would have been too young at the time. Hello, Matthew. But yeah, to her credit, although apparently the execs across the board that day of shooting those scenes that you can see there on the set and online, everybody was in an absolute panic. Because apparently she was fine during the during the auditions. Kate Mulgrew was second. She was the runner-up. But apparently, if you go to the story, it's after half a day of shooting, all the higher-ups, because obviously a lot of them are going to be upset on set. They were in a complete panic. I think Berman almost lost his job over it. It was that bad.
Wow.
So yeah, just if you haven't seen them, check those out.
Yeah, it's the 90s. Yeah, what a time! But that was the time when all this happened behind closed doors, and all these beefs. We didn't know anything about them, did we? We didn't know what morons a lot of these people probably were. What nightmares they were on set. They wouldn't go and bitch about one another on social media afterwards, and they certainly wouldn't tell us how to live our lives. We've just had Matt pop up there in the live chat, and he's up here too with his contact details there. Matt on X at MattPot74. You can reach him there, but you can also reach him right here as well. Hi, Matt.
Hello.
Hey.
Morning.
Good morning. Good morning, mate. How are you?
Good morning.
I slept in.
I don't blame you. I was calling you a few minutes ago, but no, I don't blame you at all, mate. No,
I heard my ears burning.
No. Good morning. What have you missed so far? You've missed Daredevil Born Again. We were talking about that. You missed our quick chat about Dempsey and Makepeace there. Gary's been watching it, and so far it seems to be at least one thumb up there from Mr. Akers. Absolutely. And what else have we talked about? We've put the world to rights, Matt, as best that we can, but we've stayed very much in the Northern Hemisphere.
So you haven't spoken about David Lynch yet?
No, we're about to get stuck into that right now after I say thank you to everybody for all the comments there across YouTube and on Rumble too. We really do appreciate it as we've been sort of roaming around the geeky universe already. Let's get stuck into it with a chat about a figure that's irreplaceable. I think is that a word? Is that appropriate? I think it probably is.
There are those among us who will use inferior video cassettes to watch their favorite programs. But then again, there are those who have seen the light and will only use TDK's famous Super Avalon cassettes. Whether it's films, drama, or sport, nothing captures those memorable moments with greater clarity, color, or more stunning reality than Super Avalon videotape from TDK, the great name in tape cassettes.
TDK was the bomb, man. Those were the best tapes.
They were good.
They were great. Just the other day, I was thinking about how in the 90s, which fixate on the 90s on this edition of the show, how in the 90s, the explosion of not just franchises, so multi-franchise VHS rental outlets, but sell-through video markets as well, where you could buy movies at an affordable price. How much of a boon that was to film collectors and the kind of the reach of movies generally, really. Even if you didn't want to buy this stuff, you could go down to your local video rental store and rent a couple of things out, 3, even 4 or 5 things, have them for the full week, and you could experiment a little with your picks. You could maybe choose things that you wouldn't normally pick or stuff for different members of the family or things you'd always been curious about. And I appreciate the results are going to vary on this, but I think there are some directors, some creatives, and even some stars, but particularly directors whose material, even though it was made for the big screen, whose work was done a massive favour, I think, by availability in most high streets, certainly in Britain, because you could rent their stuff out and watch it over and over again, which meant that even if you didn't get it the first time or wondered what it what the hell you were looking at, then the second or third time you might be able to get a decent handle, a take on what you were watching, on where you'd been taken. And I don't think anybody's work was more helped out in that respect than that of David Lynch, the visionary writer, director, artist, musician. What else? What was there anything David Lynch didn't do? David Lynch passed away just a couple of days ago at the age of 78. It was probably not a great surprise. He had been quite ill for a number of years, hadn't he? He'd with emphysema. But even so,
he was a prolific smoker. He was a shocker.
Yeah, like packs a day.
Yeah.
Apparently, he'd stopped smoking several years ago, but it wasn't in time to not adversely affect his life to the point where he had to take oxygen everywhere with him, like tanks of oxygen and things like that, which must have been very difficult. But David Lynch was quite, for a man who made films that are some people call impenetrable, but are, I think at the very least, challenging, daring, and deep, and all of those things. I actually think David Lynch was a joyous man whose work was just as beautiful as it was ugly. And
exactly. That's exactly what he was.
I know, Rabbi, that he hadn't made a feature film in nearly 20 years. But even so, I think that the whole of kind of filmmaking, media, is it feels a lot worse for the reality now dawning that we live in a world where David Lynch doesn't exist. Nothing's going to come from him. I'm very sad about it. I would imagine you were too, Rabbi.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. But for me, I mean, like his life as an artist, at least a commercial artist, really, it kind of petered out somewhat into him doing little products he liked over the last 15 years. Right? He wasn't. His peak was essentially Blue Velvet to Wild at Heart, to Blue Velvet, Twin Peaks, Wild at Heart. After that, I think his movies got. I think Mulholland Drive is a incredible movie, right?
Yeah. But the issue was, I think, Rabbi, is that this man, even though his work has this kind of reputation as being, as I say, impenetrable, and nobody knows. It's impossible to pin down, and visually sort of quite awkward. David Lynch was a populist. He wasn't an elitist. He wanted people to see his stuff.
And that's where his movies were. That's why I say Twin Peaks, Wild at Heart, and Blue Velvet. That's where he was to marry his unique worldview with a very mainstream populist narrative. That's where he really worked best, right? I mean, Dune doesn't really care. Dune was, he did The Elephant Man to essentially get the job to do Dune.
Yeah.
And Dune was, it wasn't really a David Lynch movie. But then he did Blue Velvet. And I think David Lynch was really born there. Right?
Because although he was never like a kite in the wind when it came to the studio system, his career did go through sort of peaks and troughs. He was sort of battered around a little bit, wasn't he? Yeah. They tried to chew him up and spit him out in the way that they do so many others.
Yeah,
Chris.
But he refused to do that.
He wouldn't, would he? And he would learn from his mistakes and those interactions, and he'd learn from his successes and his failures, and power through to the next thing.
What was a triumph for him, because it was a very popular success, right? At the same time, somewhat taking the piss out of itself for most of it, right? But I love look. I watched Blue Velvet when I was 16, 17, and that had such a massive impact on my worldview. Right. First thing I like this is
you dirty bastard.
Well, no, I mean, look, there's a lot of intense sexuality in a lot of his work, but it's more like sensuality, right? It's there's a playfulness around sensuality with it, which is really nice. It's relaxing, it's warm, it's fun. Right.
There's as much innocence in David Lynch's work as there is decadence. That's one of many strange things about it.
Look at the whole Sherilyn Fenn sequence where she's undercover in a Canadian brothel in the end of Twin Peaks season 1. And the best brothel you've ever seen. I mean, everyone's wearing these beautiful outfits, including her. It's really great, right? It's but it's really great. But again, a lot of his work, I think, is he looks very like the normal Rockwell-esque, the very American apple pie. He shows that, and it's also this dark, terrifying interior. And I think a lot of his work is saying how it's the same thing. Yeah,
an underside.
Yeah,
Chris. Well, I'd say what I love about David Lynch is probably some of his least accessible movies. I've talked in the past about Dario Argento and Suspiria, who visualizes a nightmare perfectly. What I like about movies like Eraserhead, Lost Highway, and Mulholland Drive, but especially Eraserhead, is it visualizes a dream where things don't entirely make sense. You don't quite know what's going on. What's with baby alien? It's one of these things where now, if somebody were to do it, we might say it was pretentious. But when Eraserhead came out in 1977, I don't think we've ever seen anything like that before or since. But it's one of these things where you analyze, you have no idea what's going on. Lost Highway, there's a series of videos on YouTube trying to make sense of that. Mulholland Drive, I actually hated it the first time I saw it back in 2001, but it's now one of my favorite films.
I disliked several of these films the first time I saw them.
I remember
that's the weird thing about it. There's something that he makes you look at what you really don't want to see. Like Blue Velvet, there's a lot. Razorhead, you're looking at things you don't really want to see, but you can't not look. You can't look away, right?
You can't stop thinking about them afterwards, Rabbi.
Right, because there's some real truth there, and it's not clear what that real truth is, right? But you've got to introspect about it. I think this is I think he's probably one of the most important artists of our lifetime. So that it's already sad he passed away for that.
I'd say in film history.
I absolutely do adore his work.
There is a school of thought that says he was sort of the last great American filmmaker, and that people like Tim Burton, who seems to be have spent I think Tim Burton spent a large part of his career trying to sort of chase David Lynch a little. I think he kind of gave up a few years ago. So I'd say people who suggest David Lynch is the last great American filmmaker might have a point.
Yeah, I can't think anybody's in the 2000s. I mean, I don't know. If you want to talk about Michael Bay, maybe.
No.
I know, but
Michael Bay's predictable. Let's blow things up, and the bigger the explosion, the better. Whereas David Lynch, I've always been convinced that the guy is partially insane, but in a good way. When you look at some of the things he's come up with, but even look at Twin Peaks, which I won't do spoilers because if you haven't seen it, this show is now 35 years old, or premiered 35 years ago. I've never seen anything like it before or since. And it's one of those that you'll revisit maybe every few years. You love the town that he's created, sort of the completely offbeat character. So I think this is where it's surrealist.
See, this is where I think, it's surreal and it's dreamlike, and on the surface of it, this is where he antagonized, I think, the most number of people, because obviously this was the biggest popular success that he ever had, certainly in Britain. This was on in prime time on British television, Gary, and this is, I think, where the accusation of that David Lynch and that to be Lynchian is simply to be pretentious. This is where that accusation came from, which is desperately unfair. I'm not sure that it stuck, having said that, but it was something that was repeated quite often. But I don't think his work was pretentious at all. I think he wanted everybody to see this stuff, and I think he was happy for everybody to have their own interpretation of it, Matt. I mean, what are your thoughts about David Lynch, and how is he viewed in Australia? And did you grow up with him in the same way that I certainly did?
Well, I was. The weird thing is, I was never a fan. Like, I remember going to see Dune in the cinema and
So did
going,
I.
what the hell was that? And I was expecting this big space opera, you know. And I
Me
was
too.
like,
That's why I went.
this is just, yeah, and then it was just weird. And it was just like...
I went to see Dune in the theater, and I was like, "This is crazy! I love this. I love that it's so not Star Wars."
Right? The thing is, Matt's right though. Matt's right though, isn't he, Rabbi? Because the poster, the trailer, the taglines, everything kind of lent into that. Okay, if you love Star Wars, if you love this is the next big thing. I was just like you, Matt. I went to the cinema to see this, expecting I didn't want to miss out on what I felt was likely to be the next big saga. And I think not only was I one of only about 20 people in the entire cinema, but I spent most of the time just staring at the screen. You know, I was 9, 10 years old, just what the fuck?
I couldn't even retain anything because there was just so much weird. I mean, even the special effects.
Dude,
the special effects were fantastic, but you know, it was just the
considering we're talking about 41 years ago, this really was an incredible achievement that somebody tried to film Dune all those decades ago.
Well, I remember when we went to go, when me and my friends in the 90s, like every Tuesday, I've said this before, we went on cheap night, and I remember the movie that we decided to go see one week in 1997 was Lost Highway. We didn't know anything about it other than, 9 Inch Nails had a video. So we went to watch it, and every single one of us walking out like, what the hell was that? So we hated it. It wasn't until probably 10, 15 years later that I revisited. I'm like, no, this is good. But he wasn't accessible to the general public. And yet he was, because Twin Peaks, even though it had a short run, it is probably one of the most legendary series of all. It's up there with those series that were probably
it's massively influential, Chris, across all media. It turns up everywhere, sometimes being parodied or sometimes just being directly ripped off.
And you can't rip them off successfully because nobody's mind works like David Lynch's did.
Can I just say something? I think with Twin Peaks, like for the first real viral moment, like in the 90s, it was Who Killed Laura Palmer, and it was everywhere. You know, it was for that first season. It was like, who do you think did it? Who do you think did it? You know,
It's like that here too.
And that was without the internet, so they weren't.
It was still parody. I always assumed the whole thing was Who Killed Laura Palmer, and Twin Peaks in general. He was making fun of the tropes of soap operas, while telling his his intense view of Americana.
I think it was absolutely I think it was an exploration of Americana, and I would say from the 50s to the 90s. Really, I think it exists in a kind of bubble.
Right. Yeah. No. I do agree. I mean, look, honestly, for me, this is one of his minor things. It's very studio driven, and again, you see how much fun he had with it, and I kind of like the movie a lot more that he tried to wrap. I never saw the sequel series, which apparently everybody hated.
Now, we have to stay away from talk of the sequel series because I haven't seen it either, and I don't want to risk any spoilers at all. So anybody in the live chat, please don't talk about it.
And how bad it is for me. I've had that. I bought that series on Blu-ray.
I'm not joking. I'm not.
I haven't seen it yet because I've heard so many awful things about it, and I don't want to ruin it. This year I'm going to watch it though.
Me too.
I'll just distance.
Apparently, they're about to re-release a Blu-ray set with everything in, which was put out originally about 5 years ago in very limited numbers. It's coming out in Blu-ray with the film and with some selected episodes in 4K. That's due to be re-released next month. So I'm going to be doing my damnedest to get that, and then I can rewatch the entire thing and then watch the 18 episodes of the sequel series that I've never ever seen. It came out just at a time in my life where I just couldn't watch any TV for a complicated reason. So that's why I've never watched it.
I got to say, Matt's totally right in that when that first 7 episode season happened, the publicity just blanketed everything over here. I mean, you couldn't turn without seeing, the picture of Kyle MacLachlan and Sherilyn Fenn sitting at the cafe booth with the coffee and everything. And the whole thing was about damn fine cup of coffee and the cherry pie, and that was everywhere. Yeah. And even the really surreal stuff in that season, like at the end of the 3rd episode with Cooper's dream, people hadn't seen anything like it, but they couched it as, for mystery fans, all you need to do is deconstruct it, and the answer to the mystery is in that dream. So even the surreal images were presented in a way that it kind of invited the audience in to kind of, interact with it and decipher it. The problem with the, and I know that, it was studio pressure, that forced Lynch to actually solve the mystery more sooner than he wanted to. I remember a statement that he made. His original intention was, he said that we'd never find out who killed Laura Palmer, because in his mind, that wasn't what the show was about. As you've just said, it was an exploration of this kind of, Americana thing. I don't think that would have flown for a while. I think audience's patience. Well, I mean, I think audience's patience eventually would have gotten him to this, like, okay, let's get it going. So I don't think that would have lasted forever.
In time, it would have led to an instant that he would have had what Patrick McGoohan had after the prison. The people would have been approaching him in the street and sort of giving him a hard time and things like that.
Again, this was the first prolonged exposure I had to David Lynch, and to me, it was absolutely hypnotic.
Oh man, I forgot David Bowie.
And even there in the, for spoilers, anybody who hasn't seen Twin Peaks, the episode that reveals who Laura Palmer's killer was, which concludes with an extended sequence of another murder there before our eyes, is incredibly violent and incredibly disturbing. And the problem was, I think that Mark Frost, who did this series with him, they kind of, after they solved it, there was a patch of about 5 episodes which was just meandering because they didn't know where they were going. They had to reset, and then eventually got on to the back half, which was Cooper's like psychotic old partner who came back, and then the show found
Wyndham Earl. That's my favorite stuff.
Right, and it found its feet again. But that kind of like 5-episode patch where the biker gets involved in kind of like a double indemnity thing, and it was just like, where is this show going? I think a lot of the audience kind of disappeared for that, and I think with the movie, I think that it's the movie is really interesting, but I think at the time people were expecting it to advance the story after the end of the series, and all it did was basically provide more detail about things we already knew.
Actually, Gary, now you mention it,
frustrating.
Now you mention it, I think that the Twin Peaks movie, Fire Walk with Me, I think that was the very first prequel that I ever saw.
Mm-hmm.
Or certainly that I was aware that I was, because I saw that at the cinema as well. I knew what I was going to be getting, but up until that moment, I don't think I'd ever seen a film or a TV show that had been consciously set before something that I'd already seen. But it does advance it in that kind of holistic way. It doesn't in a narrative way.
There's a few lines of dialogue which, if you're familiar with the whole events of the series, do advance little elements of it through lines of dialogue. But I think overall, I think people wanted the next chapter. And so I think that may have been why there was kind of resistance after it was released, because it subverted expectations.
I think we could do a deep dive on Twin Peaks at some point in the future. Of course, David Lynch played Gordon Cole himself in Twin Peaks very effectively, didn't he?
And David Duchovny shows up in drag.
That's
yeah, that's
But
right.
no,
yeah.
I think going on what Gary was saying, and this is something that I hear quite often about Twin Peaks, is that first season, so the 8 episodes, season 1, are 8 of the most perfect episodes of TV ever made. Say if it had been one of those where it had been canceled after those 8 episodes, we'd still be speculating now. But you're right, where it's the idea of the show, I think, had a limited time span. And in revealing the big thing that I won't say because find it out for yourself, I think too early. It should have been at the end of the second season, given that the show got axed after that anyway.
Yeah.
Is a mistake. And you're right, Gary. I think it's the meandering in between where I have to pull up the ratings, but I think they pretty much tanked after that, or a few episodes afterwards. But yeah, watch those first 8 episodes. They are brilliant. Something that we'd never seen before or seen since.
You got to remember too, like this struck a chord around the world, not just in America and
it was
and
the right
Australia
show.
here and
It was the right show at the right time, Matt, because all those shows like Dallas and Dynasty that I loved so much, they were all very much sort of running out of steam, and people wanted something that could invest in a similar way, but get something completely different out of.
Yeah, but whereas those sort of things, there's a bit of Americana in them and everything as well, and in Japan, this thing was even more massive. They had television adverts, cups of coffee, and they were directed by David Lynch, this thing was just because the Japanese love odd. So I think it spoke to them as well. So, it translated everywhere. So it was and it's the only show that actually really did translate everywhere of anything of his.
We have a quote here that was published on the morning of after he passed away from his family. It just says, "It is with deep regret that we, his family, announce the passing of the man and the artist David Lynch. We would appreciate some privacy at this time. There's a big hole in the world now that he's no longer with us. But as he would say, keep your eye on the donut and not on the hole. It's a beautiful day with golden sunshine and blue skies all the way." I can imagine him saying that.
And I think a lot of the power of the legacy of the show, I think, is due in no small part to that immortal music.
Exactly.
It was in the top 10, wasn't it?
When somebody mentions Twin Peaks to me, I immediately am visualizing and hearing the opening of the show.
Me too. Music was a massive part of David Lynch's work, as was obviously cinema history and literature, but in a kind of pulpy literature way. I think, not that I don't think he was a literate man, but I think he enjoyed everything that was popular. I don't think he was a snooty man at all. So it all played into this stuff really beautifully. I mean, earlier on, Matt, you talked about going to see Dune. And in between Dune and Twin Peaks, I didn't give David Lynch a second thought. I've got to be honest. I was all about Australian soap operas, Doctor Who, and trying to chase girls. And so I didn't give David Lynch a second thought until Twin Peaks. But after that, I went and I sought out all his films. I didn't discover most of David Lynch's films until the 90s. On VHS, I'd seen The Elephant Man when I was a kid and Eraserhead. Had no idea who directed them, what I was looking at, or anything like that. And the first thing that I made a beeline for was Blue Velvet, and I was just completely captivated by this movie. It's perhaps one of his most easy to follow films, but like a lot of them, I've gone back to it 3 or 4 times since, and I've seen something different in it every time. But I tell you what, another thing about David Lynch movies, though, about any David Lynch project, is after the fact. If I was to say to people at work, they say, "What did you do last night?" "I watched a movie." "Oh, it was Blue Velvet by David Lynch." I remember somebody saying, "What was it about?" And I thought, and I'd say, well, this guy who got, and you think, well, I knew at the time. Why don't I know now? And you think, well, it's because what I interpreted it as, how I felt about it, was how it made me feel there and then. And then the moment has sort of gone. And that doesn't mean that the films are empty in any way or superficial. I think it just means that they're unique. I think that was Lynch's purpose. I think that's what it is to be Lynchian, Chris.
I honestly, I think they on a subliminal level somehow interact with you as the viewer. You are part of the movie experience, and it does that like Mulholland Drive. It feels like when you're just waking up from a dream, right? It doesn't just feel like a dream, but it's like it's got that very lucid feel to it, right?
Yeah.
And it's completely incomprehensible. I have no idea what's going on in most of it. But I
had to Google it.
Well, you don't know. It's up for interpretation, which I like, which is young dumb me back in 20
interpretation
didn't like
changes as you change.
It's weird that some of his movies spoke to you as the viewer and some of them didn't. Like, there's one that I absolutely adore, and I don't know why, but it's only a short that he did, and it's called What Did Jack Do? And it's on Netflix, and if you've ever seen it, it's only like 15 minutes, and it is David Lynch interrogating a monkey. So, if you've never seen it, it is brilliant. It is brilliant, and it's just this little monkey, and like what happened. But it gets worse. It is. If you've never, has no one ever seen this?
No, but I'm going to watch it after the show.
Okay, yeah. So it's David Lynch actually superimposed his mouth over this monkey. So the monkey is talking back to David Lynch, who's supposed to be a policeman.
Just imagine, if David Lynch and Robbie Williams had been in the same movie. That would have been
some of the monkeys. Dialogue. No. This is a real monkey. So,
okay.
Some of the dialogue, I just laugh out loud at it. It is bonkers. Like, just some of the comebacks, and it's very short. It's only got two people. It has a third person that comes in, but very briefly. But I watched it the night that he passed away, and I was just like, oh, this is probably one of my favorites. Like, So check that one out. It's probably, he did it in 2017, so it's probably one of the last few that he actually
because he hadn't directed a feature film since 2006, I think. Mulholland Drive was 2001. This is the movie that now it wasn't Naomi Watts' first film by a long chalk. She'd been in film. She was in Tank Girl years before, but it pretty much launched her career. It saved her career, I think.
Oh no, she was famous for having lamb. By the way,
but he used to find muses, didn't he? Because Laura Dern was undoubtedly another one, star of or co-star of Wild at Heart with Nicolas Cage. Fantastic film. I'd imagine you're really keen on this one, Chris.
Oh, sorry, I cut out my mic there for 1 second. I haven't seen that one in years.
No, I haven't either.
No. What year was that?
1990.
Because when I heard that Lynch had died, Chris, I had a rush of sort of visions of his various films, and I started, thinking back to when I first saw them. And this is a prime example because this came out in 1990. So around the Twin Peaks time, in between episodes of Twin Peaks, if you wanted to get a fix of the nearest approachable thing, I went and rented this, for example, to sort of get something along similar lines.
That was when I first saw it, and it was from the creator of Twin Peaks. This would have been maybe around 91. I haven't seen this probably since the VHS days. I barely remember it. So here's the I've been slowly when I collect my physical media stuff, there are certain sets and directors that I'm slowly working on, and David Lynch, I have maybe half of his films, and the reason is most of them are released by Criterion, and in Canada they cost a small fortune. I don't even know who put this out. I know it's on Blu-ray. I don't even know if it's still in print.
Well, when I heard the news, I started to get this sort of rush of various images from various movies. And then I thought to myself, like the Elephant Man prime example, because obviously that was the first one I saw of his, and Lost Highway. And I thought, oh God, I had to go and check. I thought, oh, I hope I've got that one. I think I've got that one. I sort of went through a mental sort of check through my list of what I owned. I thought, oh God, I've got to make sure I've got Wild at Heart on DVD, because I'm going to need to watch this stuff soon. I think that I'd forgotten how much I loved his movies. I've spent, in the time that he's been off experimenting, doing various other things, I think to my shame, I'd kind of forgotten about David Lynch and what these films did mean to me in the 1990s. And I do intend on rediscovering them.
Well, I just looked it up. Yeah, so Wild at Heart, actually it's in my card too. But yeah, so the most recent Blu-ray released by Shout Factory, 2018 Shout Factory. So this is when they actually gave a shit. Sorry, bad language again. But yeah, so I'm gonna add this to my cart, and I'm gonna get it.
I saw this in the cinema as it came out, and I was excited to see it. I knew exactly because I saw Blue Velvet. I saw it in the Everyman cinema, the artsy cinema in Hampstead, right? But it was like 16 when it on its first release, and it blew my mind, right? That it was that. And at the same time, the comic book revolution was going. So you had Alan Moore's stuff going on. You had I was reading stuff by Brian Tolbert, like Adventures Bound of Luther Arkwright. It was a really formative time in my life, and yeah, you can certainly see why I am somewhat. Some would describe a bit of a perv, right?
Because Rabbi, around that time, noir was kind of coming back, wasn't it? So at the same time that Blue Velvet was,
everybody's got doing Blade Runner around the same time. It was very much a thing. Yeah,
and it wasn't long after that Frank Miller started the From Hell,
Sin City stuff, and
Sin City. Sorry, yeah.
90s. Yeah. No, you're right. You're absolutely right.
And and thanks to David Lynch, he was really a star maker. This was the first time that I had seen Kyle MacLachlan, and then in Twin Peaks alone, you have like Cheryl and Finn, you have Match and Amick, Lara Flynn Boyle, and Cheryl Lee.
He had incredible taste in women.
Cheryl Lee, who played Laura Palmer, I honestly think she should have gotten an Oscar nomination for Fire Walk with Me. That was a staggering performance from her in that movie.
I think you've got to also remember, like, things like The Elephant Man, right? It wasn't only just the style, in the film, because with The Elephant Man, the whole movie is in black and white, and this was 1980, 81?
80, yeah.
Yeah.
And to take that step of, because no one had done a black and white film for like...
No, and Matt, I remember that some people felt that simply by making a film in black and white in 1980, that simply by doing that was pretentious, and that was somebody being an arse.
Yeah, but it wasn't like unheard of. You had Wim Wenders doing Wings of Desire around the same time, which was mostly in black and white. Right? It's mostly the same audience. I don't remember getting any grief for being in black and white. I really don't. I do. And
I do as well.
And it was the fact that a lot of people were just not sure about getting it because of the fact that it was in black and white.
I'm trying to remember how Barry Norman reviewed it. I think he liked it.
I think he was a big David Lynch fan. Obviously, The Elephant Man with John Hurt and Anthony Hopkins as well, years before he played Hannibal Lecter.
Man, could you imagine if he did Return of the Jedi? They're trying to get him for Return of the Jedi, and he ended up doing Dune instead or something like that.
I remember, Matt, when this came out, a lot of the publicity was the fact that it was like executive produced by Mel Brooks. Because I remember at the time everybody going, "Wait, this is a Mel Brooks movie?" You remember that? The fact that he'd be connected with something like The Elephant Man.
It's a weird.
David Lynch was connected with all of these people as well. Steven Spielberg speaks very highly of David Lynch personally and professionally. Mel Brooks does too. Other filmmakers adored this man.
Silent, so.
Actors love him. As you say, George Lucas aggressively courted him to work on Star Wars. Have you all heard that story?
Yeah, I think it would have been. It would have been. odd
didn't
had
know
he
that?
done Star
Yeah, he
Wars
was-
because he wouldn't have had the creative freedom that he would have had with Dune. I have a feeling he probably would not have had a good time doing Star Wars because he would have been stifled because it had to be Star Wars, and that's not.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think
I would have loved to have seen David Lynch's take on Jar Jar Binks. That would have been interesting.
Well, it's something that we hear talked about quite a lot, and people say, "Oh, did you know that David Lynch nearly directed Star Wars? That David Lynch was going to direct Star Wars? That David Lynch turned this down, or there was this, there was that, there was the other." And rather than us try to sort of remember what may have been said when, I thought it might be better if we hear it from David Lynch himself. Check this out.
Wow.
Did you turn down George Lucas for directing Star Wars: Return of the Jedi?
I was asked by George to come up to see him and talk to him about directing, which would be the third Star Wars. And I had next door to zero interest. But I always admired George. You know, George is a guy that does what he loves, and I do what I love. The difference is what George loves makes hundreds of billions of dollars. So I thought I should go up and at least visit with him. And it was incredible. I had to go to this building in LA first and get a special credit card, and I had to get special keys, and a letter came and a map. And then I went into the airport, and I flew up, and then they had a rental car all ready for me, and this keys, and everything was set, and I was to drive to this place, and I came into an office, and there was George. And he talked with me for a little bit, and then he said, "I want to show you something." Now, right about in this time, I started getting a little bit of a headache. You know what I'm talking about. Okay. So he took me upstairs, and he showed me these things called Wookiees. And now this headache is getting stronger. And he showed me many animals and different things. Then he took me for a ride in his Ferrari for a lunch. And George is kind of short, so his seat was way back, and he was almost laying down in the car. We were flying through this little town up in Northern California. We went to a restaurant. Not that I don't like salad, but that's all they had was salad. Then I got a really almost like a migraine headache, and I could hardly wait to get to home. And even before I got home, I kind of crawled into a phone booth and phoned my agent. I said, "There's no way. I know no way I can do this." He said, David, calm down. You don't have to do this." And so George, bless his heart, I told him on the phone the next day that he should direct it. It's his film. He invented everything about it. But he doesn't really love directing. And so someone else did direct that film. But I called my lawyer and told him that I wasn't going to do it. And he said, "You just lost, I don't know how many millions of dollars." But it's okay.
Wow. Wow.
What a lovely story.
Yep.
And was so well told.
Doesn't he come across as the sweetest guy?
Yeah. I love watching his interviews because he's so un-Hollywood. It's like you could tell, like, it's going to be amusing. It's going to be. There's something about him that was always so genuine, and that says it right there. Like, he could have made millions. He chose not to. He didn't do it instead.
You never interrupted him while he was directing, though, because he did have a nasty streak. There's actually video.
There's offcuts, aren't there?
Yeah, of people saying, "Oh, can you wrap this up?" And he just turns around and starts swearing.
Wow.
And they go, "It's my fault. It's my fault." And it's like,
part of the
brilliant.
The genius. But I think true geniuses, and I think there are very few directors that we can say are actual geniuses, and they have to be directors that don't fit the mold, like a Christopher Nolan. And I'd say David Lynch is one of those where, like I said, I think you have to be partially insane, maybe partially bipolar to come up with this kind of stuff. But that's in a good way, because people that create true art, things that nobody else can create, I think you have to be partially insane to come up with this. But it's I love the insanity. I like crazy people.
Do you have a favorite David Lynch movie, Chris?
Yeah, Mulholland Drive.
Said that without even flinching. How about you, Rabbi? Have you got a favorite one, or is it the first one you ever saw?
Blue Velvet and Wild at Heart. Wild at Heart has my favorite line of all time in it, which is he's recounting to Laura Dern. Nicolas Cage is recounting to Laura Dern him losing his virginity. Right? He says, and I'm following this girl upstairs. He's got this very southern drawl, right? And as he goes up, I reach my hand between her legs, right? And you see it from his point of view. And the woman looks back and says, "Oh, baby, what a bad boy you are," right? And then you cut back to him telling the story. It's Laura Dern goes, "Oh, baby, what a bad boy you are." And Nicolas Cage takes a drag of his cigarette and goes, "That's just what she said." One of the greatest lines of all time.
How about you, Gary? Have you got a favorite David Lynch movie?
I haven't seen them all like all of you have. I've only seen like a couple. I mean, I saw Mulholland Drive, Elephant Man, Eraserhead. So I don't have the breadth of it, but I'll always love Twin Peaks. So that will be my go-to for David Lynch.
When I'm looking down at this list, Matt, and I see Eraserhead and The Elephant Man, I haven't seen those films since I was a kid. And even though I have them on DVD, I think I may have gone back to Eraserhead like 20 years ago, but I've never rewatched The Elephant Man in all those years. So some of this stuff, when I see it again, it'll be like a fresh film for me. But have you got a favourite David Lynch movie?
Well, like I said, I think the one that I go to the most is What Did Jack Do? And that's it's only because it's short and it's really just off the wall. I love it. And I could just keep watching it. It's like watching a new movie. It's crazy.
Because that's what he spent the last 20 years doing, isn't it, Matt? He didn't sit around on his arse. He made music. He'd been making music videos for, just as Gary said, for 30 years. He did the Wicked Game, the Chris Isaak tune. He did the music video to that. He'd always made music videos, short films, animations. He would try practically anything.
Yeah. I mean, things like Dune and that I've never gone back to. I just found it so... No, I haven't seen it since 1983.
We'll have to watch it on the show in a few weeks' time, won't we?
Yeah. So, but I mean, I think also Twin Peaks was the first time that me and my mother actually watched a show together because she was a huge murder mystery fan. And, we used to have, kids had their own shows that they'd watch.
Yeah.
And, the parents would watch. And I think this is the first one that was like, ooh, this is a murder mystery, So, so I have fond memories about that as well. So, and it was the thoughts of, who did it and all this sort of thing. So, but I mean, he was a one in a trillion, like there'll never ever be. He was an auteur.
Yeah.
He was, he was, there's just, everybody tries to be David Lynch, but they just don't succeed. I mean, you have people like, Ryan Johnson, who I think believes that he's David Lynch reincarnated.
Well,
Wes Anderson for I do see what you mean. I think there's
David Lynch
a
Star
breed
Wars would have been better. Well, Dan, I'm also I'm looking at sort of like because my new focus is I'm now going to get all the David Lynch films on physical media. So I'm looking at it here. It's going to be expensive though, because Eraserhead, I have the Criterion. Elephant Man is out of print and costs a small fortune. I have the studio release of Dune, but I'm going to get the Arrow 4K. Blue Velvet, I'm getting that next week, even though it's the 4K is like $62. Wild at Heart, I'll order that. That's from Scream Factory. I have all Twin Peaks. I have the 4K of Lost Highway, paid a small fortune for it. Mulholland Drive, I have the Blu-ray Criterion collection, which I need to upgrade. And Inland Empire was also, I believe, put out by Criterion and cost a small fortune. This is going to be an expensive month.
Well, that $67 you're spending on the Blu-ray, on the Blue Velvet, is money well spent in my. What's on that disc?
I think it's just it's Criterion, so it's a straight upgrade of the Blu-ray, which is even the Blu-ray is like $50. Just a sec here.
Right.
It is
expensive. I just got it up here to see if they list. So
it's a tough choice for me, but Blue Velvet is probably my favorite. It's very closely tied, I think, with Twin Peaks Firewalk.
Well, it's got a bunch of documentaries. I'm looking like it's got a documentary 75-minute from 2002, another documentary from 2019. I'm like, just the Eraserhead has like, I think 7 documentaries on it spanning 1977 to 2014. But because if it's Criterion, it's basically state of the art in terms of transfer. And they're always going to be loaded with extras. But yeah, it's got a ton of stuff on it.
Right.
But yeah, this will be like my budget for like the rest of the month and into next of this month. But yeah, I'm going to get Blue Velvet this week.
Do you know that he was in the Fabelmans?
He played John Ford, didn't he? Steven Spielberg got him to play John Ford.
I honestly didn't know who it was when I first saw it because I was like, he did such a great job. Because I was like, who's this playing John? Who's this playing John Ford? I was like, wow,
His greatest role was when he played a spice miner in Dune. Right, this little pickup scene.
He's got little scenes in several of his films. He does the Hitchcock thing. He's in The Elephant Man as well. Several of them, just dotted here and there, where you can't really see him, but he's there. Yeah,
it's always very playful.
Let's go and check out what people have got to say in the live chat about our discussion on David Lynch and maybe those memories that they've unearthed there as well from perhaps growing up watching this great director's fabulous films.
Psst. Got any dirty videos? Bet you haven't seen this. The Scotch Video Head Cleaner. It cleans up dirty pictures caused by dirty video recording heads. Oh, glory. Look at that bone structure.
Yes, we're paying tribute. We're paying tribute here to the great David Lynch. Artist, filmmaker, musician, you name it, he did it. And we've been running through his filmography and obviously talking about his fabulous TV work there as well. But what have you got to say there in the live chat on YouTube and Rumble? We're all ears. Let's go and check out these comments, everybody. I would imagine there's a lot of people frustrated by the same things that we often talk about. Matthew Pounder says even his lesser films are gems. Are there any lesser David Lynch films?
I don't. Yeah, it's a very good point. That's something.
There were smaller films. The Straight Story is definitely a smaller film.
I wouldn't put that. That's his most normal film.
What was financially his most successful film?
I'm assuming Mulholland Drive. That seems to be his biggest.
I'd say
David Lynch filmography. I'm pulling it up right here on the things.
Now, can I ask you something? You might know something, Chris. But like, with Mulholland Drive, wasn't that originally supposed to be a TV series?
And it was, yes. And it ended up being a movie. When I've been looking at all the obituaries and stuff and stories this week, they all seem to mention Twin Peaks and then Mulholland Drive.
Yeah.
So I see David.
He filmed it. I think he filmed it, like a lot of it, and then they said, no, we're not going to go with the series. So it was like a pilot or something?
Yeah. Well, okay. So
really?
That's the thing about Twin Peaks. I first saw that in 1990 on video, and it was the pilot episode, which is essentially the first episode with a resolution tacked on them.
Yes.
And then
you could rent that.
Yeah, and that ended. Right, the one that introducing that in episode 3 in the real series.
I think
that's what they had. That's how they ended it.
Yeah, that was released. Was it in Japan or something?
I know.
That pilot. And then
it was all out here in Britain as well before the show premiered. You could get it, and nobody knew what it was. It was very innocuous. It was a nondescript cover.
I got a copy. Someone gave me a copy of it because it was totally not shown here, and so and it was like one of those 8th generation copies, of that particular movie. So of Twin Peaks. So yeah.
Okay, so I've got the box offices here. I believe so. This is originally taken from IMDb. So I think these are adjusted for inflation. So his highest, this is adjusted for inflation. So the highest was Dune, 28 million, followed by The Elephant Man at 26, followed by Mulholland Drive at 20.
That is surprising.
Followed by Wild at Heart at 14, and then the rest are all under 10 million. Lost Highway is actually, I think, the lowest at 3.8 million. That's
or is that what it cost to make?
No, that's the box office. Adjusted for inflation, 97. So, well, I remember it flopped. I just didn't remember it flopped that badly.
Wow.
So for all the sort of the bad rep that Dune gets even now, how it affected myself and Matt seeing it at the cinema when we were tiny, it's still his most successful film.
Yeah.
Wow.
Most of his movies.
I remember it was a pretty. I mean, when you're seeing those big sandworms on TV, you just go, "Oh, that looks awesome,"
I remember seeing ads.
Yeah, I loved it when I saw it.
I was like 6 when it came out, but I remember the ads. They were everywhere. I just remember I didn't see it until I was much older, but I remember the worms in the ads giving me nightmares. So yeah, it was. I'd say it was probably his best promoted thing, but Mulholland Drive is number 3. I'm just surprised. So Elephant Man at 26. I'm assuming that's including re-releases over the years.
You got to remember too that won so many awards.
Right. Yeah,
Academy Awards. Like the thing is, you got to remember is that like with modern day directors and everything, if they're like making $20 million like movies back from the box office, they're not going to last long. Okay. But with David Lynch, he won awards. So it was like, okay, do you want to become, do you want box office or do you want awards? And David Lynch won awards, and Elephant Man was massive.
It was.
Award winning.
Hurt
won BAFTAs and.
Well, it's not a bad.
I think he liked them, but I think he wanted free artistic expression.
Yeah.
Well, he didn't do that bad though. His totals, so for all his films, worldwide box office is just under 124 million. So for a director that isn't really mainstream, I'd say it's something to be proud of. And the odd thing is his international box office. None of his movies, aside from Mulholland Drive and Inland Empire, made anything. Most of them are under 100,000. Like Dune,
Never
international box office apparently is 57,000.
I know over here.
Was that the one with The Rock, Inland Empire?
You mean the actor, The Rock?
Yeah.
No, that's Southland Tales.
Yeah.
They used the same font. They used the same font.
I'm going to have to interrupt because I'm going to have to go. Okay.
Sorry, Rabbi.
Thanks for staying up, though, Rabbi. We've enjoyed your company as always. Take care, mate. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Stephen Braddock says that Lynch shows the dark underbelly of US society perfectly depicted in the insects eating each other on the garden under the picket fence. Oh, that's very dark, Stephen. And we've got various potted reviews of lots of different David Lynch movies. Twin Peaks is unique, says David, says Lord Thoth. But we've got Inland Empire was bollocks, according to Lee Smith. So we've really got the really running the gamut here, Gary.
Well, I was just going to say,
totally forgettable. As soon as you mentioned it, I was like, oh, that was a Lynch movie.
I'm sorry for interrupting. I'm really going to be interested when you guys get around to watching Twin Peaks: The Return. I'd really be interested to see what your reaction is to that.
Well, let's.
I think we'll have to do.
Say in a few months, we'll all watch it, and I will give my honest take, because literally I can see it right now sitting on my shelf. I bought it in 2018. It's still in the shrink wrap because I've been scared to watch it because I've heard so many bad things.
I'm scared as well.
So,
I haven't heard. I don't know anybody. I don't know anybody who's seen it. But when you're a content creator, all of a sudden, spoilers for anything will just pop up. And I think, no, don't spoil this. It's been 7 years.
Like, if you don't see it, it doesn't exist. So,
to be honest,
very existentialist of you.
Like, that was how I treated. That was how I treated Crocodile Dundee in Los Angeles, and it stood me well for 20 odd years. And then I made the mistake of catching it on Channel 5 one afternoon when I wasn't very well, and I so wish that I hadn't watched it.
That's terrible.
I really do.
I think that you'll. I think that you'll. Well, I was just gonna say, I think that you'll like a lot of it. I think you will be immensely frustrated by a lot of it.
Sounds like pure David Lynch to me. Lucy says that Lynch's Dune is great. I still like it more than the new Dune. A great many people feel the same way. I've come across lots of
actually watched the new
thing.
Dune. It's actually turned me off.
It's good. It's good.
Yeah,
it's just
yeah.
bit dull. a bit dull and dry. Whereas David Lynch's movie is also a little bit dull, but it's never dry.
Yeah, I found it dull.
Sci-fi is meant to be alien and otherworldly. Yeah, David Lynch's vision of Dune was also heavily compromised, we have to say, because he wanted his name taken off that film, and so his preferred cut was clocking it at 3.5-4 hours, and it's never seen the light of day, to the best of my knowledge. I know there are various different versions, but there are various different versions, as we said earlier on, but his actual preferred cut never made it out. Maybe it will do one day, as often happens with some of these filmmakers after they're gone. There's rumours that the Batman Forever, the Joel Schumacher original Batman Forever, may reappear 10 years after his death. So, it just goes to show, doesn't it? J.R. killed Laura Palmer, says Colin Archer. David Lynch should have remade The Prisoner, suggests Lee Smith.
No, never should have been remade. That remake is awful. I don't think nobody could have matched the original, but okay, everybody do yourself a favor. There's a remake of The Prisoner. Do not watch it under any circumstances. It's horrific.
It's American.
I don't mind it.
Yeah.
How dare you, Matt?
I didn't mind it.
Remake British stuff. I'm sorry, they should.
I didn't mind it anywhere near as much as a lot of people. To be fair, I found something in it, but it was nowhere. Yeah, but the original Prisoner is very special to me. David Lynch's take on The Prisoner would have been something else, I think.
Interesting, but
Wild at Heart is insane, says Lee Smith. Lots of road journeys in his films. Reminds us, Matthew Pounder. He's got George Miller's obsessed with roads as well. James Cameron's obsessed with roads, come to think of it too. Well, at least he was before he became obsessed with
blue people
on the undersea. Yeah, with Smurfs. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not a Smurf.
No, not you. Not you. I mean, under the sea. People loved the interview there on David Lynch talking about Star Wars. Star Wars heavily influenced by Dune, amongst other things. Seven Sam. We all know what everything influenced Star Wars. It was a really a hotbed, really, of other people's ideas. Yeah. And lots of people talking about Dune quite a lot, come to think of it. It's a contentious film. Lynch's daughter is a director now. I didn't know that. Did you, Gary? Anything about it?
No, I didn't.
Have to look her up, see what it is she's doing.
I think it's really unfortunate that Lynch didn't feel inclined to do another genre film that wasn't an adaptation from an already existing property like Dune. That would have been really interesting.
If he'd have done the old, what's his name, On the Road, the Jack Kerouac thing, something like that, could have been quite. That could have been something.
Jennifer Lynch. Oh wow. Okay. Yep. All right.
Have to look her up, see what she does.
Well, no. Obviously, she grew up Lynchian, so
she got the hair.
Yeah. You could say that.
Mark. Mark Leseth, I can never pronounce your name, Mark. I do apologise. Mark says Mulholland Drive is overrated. There,
I was so disappointed in Mulholland Drive. I really was.
Lee Smith says there's a work print.
Don't like it.
I can see why people don't like all of his films, to tell you the truth.
Everybody was doing Mulholland movies at that time. There was Mulholland Falls.
Was that? Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's all these weird Mulholland movies.
It was a thing. It was a thing. At least this is a Dune work print that lasts 6 hours. Wow, 6 hours.
Ooh. Wonder if that exists.
I'd like to think it does. I am going to be revisiting David Lynch's filmography. Isn't it awful that somebody has to pass away before you remember how much you loved them, admired their work, film after film, and of course the fabulous Twin Peaks series, which influenced so many other things from computer games. I mean, I've always said if it had been for Twin Peaks, X-Files would never have existed, and that's just one huge TV show. So
you would have had Agent Mulder, and remember, David Duchovny premiered in drag.
Do you think David Duchovny will ever live that down?
you cannot unsee that. So just that's the one warning for those of you that it's awesome, but you cannot unsee David.
That was a take on J. Edgar Hoover, wasn't it?
Yeah,
FBI.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. The late great David Lynch died this week, aged 78. Bless him. Let us know, as always, in the comments section, what are your favourite of Lynch's films? If you're watching this later on in space and time, you can join in the comments section. We'll get back to you as well. So share your favourite moments from those. I think it's about a dozen films that he made, and maybe seek out some of those short films. I'm definitely going to go find the monkey one that Matt's told me about. It's the idea that there's more Lynch gold out there to be feasted upon there in the corners in short form. That's quite attractive at this moment in time. Because he's sadly he's no longer with us. We want to know your thoughts though, your favourite bits as always, and we'll see you in the comments section with all of that. Okay, we're next.
And once again, for the record, Maxell tapes were trash, and they all had this pinkish tinge to them.
Did David Lynch direct that ad?
I don't know. What did you think of BASF?
Somebody reputable
you
did.
Discussion. The really good ones is BASF had like these premium archival quality tapes. Those were awesome. But if you're just looking for like not spectacular, but not terrible, but affordable workhouse tapes, BASF was fine. But Maxell was trash. So was Memorex.
I have a load of VHS up in the loft. I'm going to have to go and bring some of it down, and we'll get some of the boxes out. Have a proper geek out here about VHS tapes, whilst we scan our shelves to make sure. In my case, just make sure I've got all the David Lynch films. I've seen them all. I'm pretty sure I've got them all, but I'm going to have to go and double check and maybe even upgrade a couple.
I got to clarify something here. So Lee Smith, SVHS, no, completely different format. No, the tapes I'm talking about, they were regular VHS.
I remember
they
them.
were archival quality VHS, and they were very expensive. A certain British TV show that I will no longer mention by name got those. So yeah, sorry Dan, I had to clarify that. So different format.
I bought those for that show as well. I think we did manage to get you to talk about it a couple of weeks ago. I'm not going to push my luck, so I know we're showing.
I should say also. First run episodes or new episodes of Star Trek The Next Generation also got the fancy BASF tapes. Stuff that I didn't really care about quality, like Married with Children, I would tape an EP and use Memorex, and I think I offended Gary.
Gary's disappeared in a puff of smoke. He's disappeared, kind of like Killer Bob did, isn't he? In the old Twin the old Twin Peaks. There, he'll be popping up again. He'll be popping up any minute now. No, he hasn't. Gary, come back, Gary. He'll be back in a moment, I'm sure.
I think he's they're shutting it all down now because, like, with TikTok and all that.
Gary was pre-recording himself using Maxell videotapes and Memorex.
Do you think they're working down the list of priorities? So first to get rid of TikTok, then that Gary Akers bloke. YouTube. Oh God, Matt, I'm glad you got up to chew the fat with us for a little while here about David Lynch. At least, always good to catch up with you, mate. What have you got planned for the rest of your weekend?
Well, it's Sunday morning already, but we're in the middle of summer, so I've just been enjoying the sun and doing a lot of washing.
Okay.
So,
what have you been washing?
Clothes.
The neighbours will stare. Don't wash. Don't wash
my
that.
bed sheets.
Oh, okay. Well, as long as you're having fun.
That's
as long as you're having fun, that's what counts. And as always, the Great Bowls Trek here with the saga. Obviously, our thoughts are with Frank.
We're going to find out. We're going to find out Frank's fate next week, and we're going to hope. We're going to hope that Frank's still alive because Judge Krabby is not very nice. So Frank's in trouble. So once again, hashtag pray for Frank. And this evening, Dan, I am going to watch my new 4K of Demolition Man, which I am very excited. I'm going to watch all the extras. I got myself a frozen pizza because I'm cheap, but I'm also going to go get myself some popcorn because this deserves popcorn. So I'm very excited about that. And then my next pickups will just be I'm going to fill in what I can of the David Lynch collection, and I won't be able to afford anything else, so that'll be the next little while.
Yeah. That sounds fantastic. I have to say, I watched Demolition Man around a year ago. I was invited to do a guest spot with our mate Scott in the game closet. So I think we got together and we talked about Demolition Man on that. And I really enjoyed that. So and the film, I think I went off the film for a few years. I'm back on it again now. I got a bit sick of people talking about the seashell joke all the time because to me that's
Google. Okay, if y'all want to see,
I didn't think it was funny then. I don't think it's funny now. But
no, dude, just Google it and look at the posters. It's there's some creative ideas there that you can't unsee if you do it.
I've just got no sense of humor with some of this.
Box sets exist.
Did they?
I think there was one during the DVD era, but the problem is, I think Criterion has actually owned the release rights to a lot of them since they first came out. I think the only ones they don't own are Dune, Wild at Heart. I think that might be it. But I vaguely remember maybe 20 years ago, I remember there being a Criterion set at Future Shop, which cost of DVDs, and it was like $400. So I think it included the ones that they have the rights to, which I think is at that point was everything except Dune or Wild at Heart.
Okay.
But other than that, no, my research indicates that no, they are all separate. Most of them are Criterion, and even the regular Blu-rays will cost a small fortune, which is why I've been getting one a year.
I'm definitely going to, I've got to upgrade some of them, I think. I mean, I had a terrible experience recently where I went back to watch a vintage sci-fi movie for another show. I did a guest spot on Couch Potato Theatre. We talked about The Abyss. I went back to my Abyss DVD and it was in such bad condition. It was untrue. So, oh dear. Yeah, I'm going to have to get some of this David Lynch stuff upgraded. Gary, we thought they'd got you. We thought they'd work their way around to snipering you off there with their call of social media.
I went into the red room. Was trying to get out.
We never talked about the dwarf.
What's the rest of your weekend? No, we got all that way and we never mentioned the dwarf or the giant. Or the log lady. So, Gary, how are you good? How are you feeling the rest of your weekend then, mate? More Dempsey Mate piece or something else?
You know what? I probably will. I'll probably watch a couple more episodes of that. I might maybe watch a Dukes of Hazzard episode, but now that I see this picture here. But no, I'm going to be, filtering in some Dempsey episodes into my watch list now until I get through all of them.
I can't wait to find out what you.
No, I'm glad you put me onto it.
It is definitely a fun show. And it is very sort of binge worthy as well, because they're like 44 minutes. A lot of them are fairly fluffy. Some of them go a little harder, but generally speaking, it's the kind of show you can binge watch. Yeah, I like it. Oh dear. Oh, I wasn't slagging off Demolition Man live chat on YouTube and Rumble. Spare me, everyone. Thank you everybody for your company on this edition of the show, and of course the Rabbi from Another Planet too. You can get more Sfila Betkin several times a week.
Too much.
That sounds bad. Try stopping him live. I think he live streams. I think he's back on Sundays. He does Tuesdays and Thursdays, and when he's not live, he's dropping videos as well and edited stuff too. And you can follow him on X as well, at Lebetkin there. Make sure you go and connect with the Rabbi if you haven't already. Guys, thank you for your company. What a show. I think we've done right by the late great David Lynch on this edition of the show. It would have been wrong, because although when we were putting this together, there was various other things happening that we thought, we want to talk about this, we want to talk about that. But yeah, we couldn't not do a proper tribute to the late, the great David Lynch. Time to do some rewatching. We'll see you out there somewhere next time. Back to the final frontier, I think. In fact, next time. Yes, it's nearly here. It's nearly here, everybody. But how bad can it get? Things might be okay. Right, Coop? Maybe not. See you next time.